Welcome to Holistic Health and Healing, a show offering solutions for the body, being, and beyond. In each episode, we discuss topics that empower you to take a holistic approach to step into your unique voice in this world. Now, here are your hosts, Dr. K and Hank Setala, the Sonic Shaman.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. We have such a special guest on with us today that's going to be talking about Eastern medicine. And I have to be honest, I totally didn't have my little introduction thing ready, so I just got to it. But she's the founder of Integrative Healing Arts in New York City. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah. So if you want to give us I know you have 19 years of experience in alternative and Chinese medicine, but why don't you give us a little bit of a snippet of your background and what you bring to the table in terms of people's wellness, health, and well-being?
Okay. So I am trained in Chinese medicine, acupuncture, herbal medicine, but more than that, Chinese medicine has other branches that include food and dietary, body work, cosmology, feng shui, and different forms of exercise and meditation. So what I do is I help women get pregnant naturally. That's my main group of people. And at the same time, I also have a lot of, treating many things from anxiety, digestion, pain. And what I do is I help teach my patients how to, make that mind-body connection so that they can tap into the healing that's inside of them. We all have that. So that's in a big, the goal is that, they get healthier, they learn more about their body. And I do this with acupuncture, herbal medicine, awareness, and really helping to guide them. So that's, using all of those techniques or tools of cultivating health.
Yeah, well, you're in good company because Dr. K, she's a functional medicine doctor and incorporates all kinds of awesome, amazing things. So the conversation will probably go back more between the two of you. It's, as I'm more often in woo-woo land, but no matter...
Well, there's also a very spiritual aspect to Chinese medicine, which for the most part, that in this country is not really taught, but you can't really separate. It's mind, body, energy, and spirit, right? It's all of those things, right? So you're in conversation.
You're good. And the real challenge is having all these things, whether it's more on the woo-woo side or more on the more practical side, if you want to call it that, but putting it in the package of what we call the Western health model, because everybody, whether they want to or not, if their insurance and everything, it's all really functioning from this Western health model. So what have you found are the greatest ways to start really finding the middle ground where the two meet?
Well, I mean, it's really a matter of looking at what is the paradigm of it. So if you are doing something, so what we've been brought up is really in the Western scientific model of you have a problem, it gets diagnosed, and you get a pill or you get surgery. And so with Chinese medicine, we'll call it East Asian medicine because it also covers it because it encompasses more than just the Chinese model. There's Japanese, there's Korean, there's Indian, there's a lot of all of those practices converge with the idea of energy and healing. So with Chinese medicine, it understands what the natural state of health the body is and helps you to get there, right? So it's a very different concept. Now you can take Western thing like medications with the idea of this is going to help me get better and better, right? Versus, this is just going to, put a Band-Aid on something, because if the body's not healing and you're just treating that symptom, the disease process or whatever the root cause is continues. Yeah. And they know that whatever is going to cause, let's say, diabetes, that many of the other side effects continue, such as kidney problems, right? Eye problems later on. And so just because your sugar numbers are regulated whatever triggered the disease process continues. So understanding, yes, you can regulate your blood sugar, but also you need to work on your diet. You need to do exercise. You also need to kind of look at what are all of those other things, because that is the symptom. That what that diagnosis is really a symptom of something else. So just because your blood numbers are good, that doesn't mean you're healthy. And it's really being conscious of like all of those factors and what form of health, right? So not having a disease is not really healthy. It's not like, and so that's that definition. What kind of a quality of life do you want to have? And I think it can come from there.
And because I definitely want to touch on starting out your specialty, which is helping getting women pregnant. But before we go there, because some of our listeners obviously aren't in that space, but the things that would stop you from getting pregnant, even if you're not trying, that is still a sign that something's not healthy in the body, like hormone regulation, for example, whether or not you're trying to become pregnant or not. If those are off, that could lead to other things going on in your reality. So I want to start with that framework as we enter that conversation, so people know, hey, this is still relevant to you, even if you're not trying to get pregnant.
Oh, absolutely.
So what is the main thing when people are looking for pregnancy type of things? Like, what do you find is like the most common theme for things being off in that realm? I'm sure it could be a lot of things, but what's the most relevant, would you say?
Okay, so that's a great question, because the state of awareness, and mostly I see women because they're very much like, there's something wrong, I got to figure out what's wrong. At that state of awareness is usually when they've already gone to see a gynecologist, or they've gone to visit a clinic and had blood work done. And then it shows that their hormone levels are off. And so that's the symptom, right? That's the symptom where that is going to be an obstacle for them getting pregnant. What is causing that? Well, environmental factors, all the plastics, a lot of the foods that they're eating. They could have been on birth control for a really long time. And there's like a form of polycystic ovary syndrome that can occur, after being on birth control, right? And so then there's also stress. There's a history of diet. There could be a history of infections. Like, all of those things are leading to this picture that's being taken at that moment when they have their blood work done. And so if that isn't addressed, then all of these other numbers that are showing up are not going to make a difference. So if you just throw more hormone stimulants on that, it's not really addressing what is happening underneath. And so a big factor is, to kind of roll back, all right, you need, time-wise, we need to look at, clearing up the diet, other inflammations that are there, which I'm sure with functional medicine, they address that too.
Yep.
You're looking at the symptom of the hormone imbalances are coming, you got to come from someplace else. And then also what interferes. Stress is a big interference. And when someone is trying to get pregnant and it's not working, that really sets off alarm bells. Poor sleep. People underestimate how important sleep is. I did a thing about sleep, and it was, it's the hormone of darkness, right? It is the melatonin. And if you're not getting the sleep at the time when you need to, your biological clock is going to be off. And that means the hormones are also going to be imbalanced. So there are many things that you'd have to look at in terms of how someone is, their state of health. And that's like the big, health picture, right? Which is really important, because you need to be healthy if you're going to have a healthy pregnancy and a delivery and postpartum. So those are the things that we look at as, where are the things that are we call out of balance, and what you need to do to get healthier. And then you can really look at the measure of the hormone levels, right? So those are the things that you have control over. And if necessary, some herbs, and those are also very temporary, to just help the body move and go into that homeostasis, right? Into its natural healing state, right? That's where we're always going towards that.
And you say a lot of the same things I've heard Dr. K say. Dr. K, I know you have a lot of tools in your repertoire. How often do you deal with people who are looking to get pregnant, and what other contributions could you offer or validations to what she's already said?
Well, that's not my specialty. But I will tell you this. I do have one story around that. I had a friend that wanted to get pregnant and was not achieving it. We have an acupuncturist around here, and that's what she focuses on specifically. And she changed her diet. She was eating clean and still kind of wasn't working to the point that, Joe, I don't know if you're familiar, but Colorado has, you pay I think it's like $35,000 or $40,000 for that in vitro, and they guarantee a 75% rate pregnancy. But I'm like, I had just learned this pranic healing, and I'm like, I'm just going to play with this. So I did a healing on her. I'm like, what is holding you up emotionally? She wanted this baby so bad, but she was still kind of jealous of a friend. And so I did 3 healings on her. Within 2 weeks, she was pregnant. And she had been doing all this stuff and nothing was working. And she didn't make the connection. So this was an energetic piece. So that's my extent of helping people get pregnant.
It's all energy. And actually in my book, the one that Will I Ever Get Pregnant? The Smart Woman's Guide to Get Pregnant Over 30, I talk about those energetic blocks. So those, there's so many women that also come in and all of their numbers are perfect. Like, I don't know what's wrong. We've been trying. We have unexplained infertility. And there is conflict, an energetic conflict.
Stress. Right? Good old-fashioned stress.
Well, stress is one of the things that will bring it on. There are fears. Sometimes there are issues from their, childhood, or that, do they want to have a kid, or will their career be impacted? Is their partner going to be a good, spouse? Will that change their relationship? So
many those
are energy blocks. And with Chinese medicine, you look at all of that going into alignment, because really what you're doing is you're receiving this spirit. You are receiving this heavenly energy, which is life, right? So you have the physical, and it's really this alchemy that's going to happen. And that is, so kind of clearing out those energy blocks. Also, that's like an internal conflict, right? And so many women have it. They say, oh, I just went to another birthday, a baby shower, why not me? And when they get into that, it's like a very negative loop. And
But it's the truth, Cho. We talk about, there's so many things you have to look at. And I think we're in such a society of a quick fix. It's been 2 weeks. Why am I not better? There's so many components. And when you're starting with somebody that hasn't done anything and they've just gone to their practitioner and things aren't, they've been given a lot of pills and I don't feel better. It's like, we have to look at your sleep. We have to adjust that. I do hormone testing. I do saliva testing. It's, I'm sure you can comment on that, and I'll let you talk about the conjugated and unconjugated. But, it's so many different parts and pieces, and it takes time. It's not an instant fix, because when all these systems are off, we have to get them, like you said, back in alignment and look at the root cause. And we're in such a society of, I hear so many people say, "Oh, my doctor said my sugars are good. We're good. My metformin's working." And I'm like, but no, that's just, it's just a Band-Aid. Let's look at why this happened. And I've dealt with a lot of diabetics and getting people off of diabetic medications very simply, but it does take diet. It does take exercise.
Well,
it does take all these things.
Right?
Yes.
And so that is, getting back to what we were talking about, what's the difference? And that's really, the person has to have that desire of having that health and really be like, I don't want to be on medication. I don't want to, with diabetes, they call it's a disease where you die by the inch, right? Because of all the amputations that happen.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Scary stuff.
And so there are many, once you have that diagnosis or you have that condition, that will cause so many ripple effects for health, right? With liver, with heart disease. It's much more complicated. A patient that comes in and has to have a surgery, and they have and they're diabetic, right? With their wound recovery, all of those things. So it's not like, oh, that's fixed. It actually impacts the whole body. It's not a separate thing.
Yeah.
Very cool. And just a reminder for people who are listening that don't see see the screens that I'm putting up. If you want to connect with our guest, her website is integrativehealingarts.com. And also in the description of the video, there are links to her Instagram and her Facebook. So there's other ways that you can connect with her there. And I wanted to grab a link for your book, but I couldn't grab the title quick enough. What's the name of the book one more time? And I'll make sure I post a link to it.
Okay, it's Will I Ever Get Pregnant? The Smart Woman's Guide to Get Pregnant Over 40, Naturally Over 40.
Perfect. And out of curiosity, how often is it more on the man's side that the issue is? Like, say, for example, somebody has a real point of view, they don't want to get pregnant. They don't want to tell their wife, but they have this point of view and this intention. So there's this underlying energy around it. How often does it end up not being on the feminine side that the work needs to be done?
That's a great question, because I'd have to say for the male, it's not as much. I haven't encountered that energetic. I mean, that they won't, if they have that, they're not coming into my office. Usually I will hear it through their partner that there's a lot of resistance to changing their diet or to even getting their sperm analysis, or, you know, like doing things, that there's a lot of resistance. And that's like another block within the relationship, just as, you know, we were talking about the energetic of the person. It's not like what they're feeling, but the dynamic of the husband and wife. And in one of the chapters, you know, I talk about, you know, clearing those energetic blocks, that I tell a story of, you know, this one, like she was trying, she and her husband, and there's an aspect where it can really create this wedge in a relationship. The woman can become very obsessed about why it's not working, and then the spouse or the partner starts to retract, like kind of move away, and then she feels more like she's unsupported. So it confirms that she's all alone. And in one case, I had a patient who, at the next stage, when it was time to like, okay, now we're going to do IVF, her spouse just said, I don't want, you know what, I'm out of here. I never wanted children. Like, it was like and she was horrified. She's horrified because that was, you know, all that time she felt like it was working against her. And she ended up, having a baby on her own. So I was treating her. She had her own baby. So she, no matter what, she wanted to have a child. But it was really like all of a sudden at that moment that the spouse was like, no, I don't want this. And, they separated. And so this is, it's not saying that her desire caused it, but if the couple are not working on it together, if it's one, I ask, like, who's leading the charge, right? Who's leading the charge? Is it like, I gotta have the baby, it's really a collaboration, and it is a spiritual binding, right? This is a spiritual binding that is, and again, this is this kind of heavenly energy that is coming in to allow a life to come through you, right? Right. And so this is an definitely important piece. So for the most part, men are less involved. They really, it would be a lot easier if they would, take some herbs, clean up their diet. Sometimes there's for men, what is called a varicocele, and that's a varicosity that means there's poor circulation. Men sit, like nowadays, everyone is sitting in front of a computer. So there's a lot of poor circulation. There's inflammation. Viruses can affect the sperm quality. But the thing is that since there's a turnover, that it's a lot easier for, men, clean up your diet, lose a little weight, stop smoking, and stress and sleep. Sleep for men, very important. If they don't get enough sleep, or studies show if they go to bed after, let's say, 1 a.m, like the sleep cycle, they actually produce an enzyme that inhibits sperm production. So these are, both male and female, or in a couple, really need to, work together. Like, let's go to bed early and rest. Let's, work on exercise. Let's work on, our diet. Let's like do some yoga together or meditation. And that creates that support too, to feel, they can support each other.
Right. And that brings me to a question too, like when you were talking about the husband and wife, what about the energy of the child that would be coming into the picture? And the tradition of shamanism I practice, which is from South America, they believe that you choose your parents because they're going to be the genetic donation that you need for whatever you're coming to be, but also they're in the physical location. There's a lot of significance to the place that you're born, the nature spirits of your birthplace, because they hold the blueprint for the perfect you. So I'm curious how many times, if any, like, would it be possible to connect with the energy, the soul of the being that's coming in and working with them even to create the optimal conditions?
Yeah, I mean, that is something that I give exercises, for the parents. And actually, there's something in the book where we talk about a couple where, they made, you create like an altar and you call in. In fact, one of the exercises that I have is like to do a vision board and really to, find a picture of like a baby or something. And that feeling to have is that same feeling, when people see kittens or they see puppies and they're like, I want that, to like really open up your heart and that desire so that you're like really opening energetically to receive that. So, when people see like, a puppy or a kitten or, little, cute little things, that there's this feeling, that energy that is magnetic, that connects. So one of the exercises, I have the woman do her own vision board. And then I also say, you and your husband do one together, because, what your life is going to be like, one person may have on their, he might have on his vision board that it's all going to be about going and golfing and going skiing, and there's no baby in the picture. And she has her picture of, the going to preschool and, birthday parties and all kinds of stuff. And so important that, that energetically is also that they're excited about like that, what is that going to look like? And I think that definitely calls in, the energy for sure. So it's like this, they're ready, and this we call the spirit or whatever that life is going to be attracted to it. One of the things that I have to say is that the people that have, come to me and we've worked together, they all had really like healthy babies and also happy babies, right? They were like happy. They weren't colicky. They were in really just like, I'm going to say adorable, right? Their energy was really good. And I believe that's also because that feeling of, when they were, the couple was struggling. And then when this life came in, there's this like sense of like a relief and gratitude and really being connected to their body and, the gift of life and how it's a miracle. And it's really like an energy, like this is a miracle that I am wanting, and I'm ready to be a parent. I'm ready to receive. And so, I believe that calls in, the kind of child, right? So that they are, because they're already good parents. Like they're already good parents. They're all ready to, take on that challenge.
Yeah. And for everybody who isn't in the space of wanting to be pregnant or past that point in their lives, substitute baby with anything you want to manifest in your life. Like you can create a vision board. You can do all these things, hold the energy and hold the space for creating anything. And also a reminder for folks, if you have a question or a comment, we welcome that. We love to go where the energy goes. We had Anne-Marie tuning in, just saying, good morning, Dr. K, Hank, and our special guest. I'm avoiding because I forgot the name. How do you pronounce the first name again?
Joe.
Joe. I know. It was
Sometimes I put it in quotes for it's okay.
I know. And then we have someone just asking a question about alcohol, that it's really important for guys to cut alcohol in order to get pregnant. Is that something that you run into a lot?
You know what, I think that, the thing with alcohol, it has sugar. And in some cases, like one of the things I write about is, perfection. That can become like an issue when you're like, I have to do everything perfectly, not a single this or that. Alcohol is not great. So if but if you have a little wine or something, it's not the end of the world, right? You have to kind of be, in some cases, I kind of feel like if you're so worried about everything, that has more of negative energy,
Yeah.
and also creates more stress hormones.
I agree.
Than if you like, okay, I'll have a sip, or, that is not a terrible thing, right? And so, but in general, I'm not a believer in really drinking alcohol. I don't drink alcohol. It doesn't, for me, it doesn't hold much significance, right? But I mean, it does have a medicinal, it does have some medicinal properties with it, in terms of some herbs are put into like a wine because of how it absorbs into the bloodstream much faster. So, but for, you really got to look at kind of cleaning your diet up, and that's something sometimes you're like, oh, I can't drink. I'm not going to be able to go out with my friends and go drinking. And I'm like, well, how much do you drink when, so then, those are issues. So if you can stop, I would say definitely just,
Yeah. But I've been retired from being a professional drinker for about 13 years. So I'm right there with you. And in fact, after today's broadcast, I'm being interviewed on this radio show for being sobriety and things like that. So it's very timely that question came up for me. So,
yeah.
And we also had Greg just saying hello. And just a reminder too, depending where you're watching from, if you do want to make a comment, there's a link to the YouTube channel. That's the best place to make comments. I know we'll see it. There's a couple of the Facebook pages where the comments don't roll through to the studio. So if you have been making a comment and I haven't responded, it's not that we're ignoring you. Head over to the Holistic Healing Facebook page or the group or the YouTube channel, Emergence of Being YouTube channel, and we can make sure we answer your questions. Dr. K, anything coming up in your world that sparks from a question standpoint? Because I know you have the medical mind. There might be more specific things that you can pinpoint than my Shanamana questions.
Oh, well, it is about hormones, and it is about, I wondered how you deal with, one of the things that's just coming up for me is, insurance. I don't know why it's coming up, but it is a lot of people like, well, is my insurance going to cover this? And, obviously I don't think your insurance covers it for you, correct? This is a personal choice.
It's really a personal choice. And that is, insurance is a whole other topic, right? Once you have someone else who, the insurance companies are for making profit, right? They're not really in the business of, of healthcare. So that is the misnomer, when someone says, well, this is X number of times. I mean, and that creates this idea also. So with fertility, for instance, and I hope I'm answering this, is that, some companies, they go like, okay, I want to use my insurance because, it's going to pay for something. Well, you basically paid for it.
Yes.
You're getting it. You've actually somehow paid. It's taken out of it's part of your package. It's not a free thing. And once you get to really starting to use it, and often you have to pay out of pocket before, like, reach a deductible, right, before you can actually receive the benefit of it, right? So it's always measured. An actuary will measure like, well, if you have to spend $5,000, the average, what does someone spend out of pocket if they're healthy? Not that much in a year. So they'll never tap into that, the amount that was put in the premium for them, right? So the thing is you work in a company, and you basically, when you're younger, you're pretty healthy, except for now, more people are kind of sicker. So all of your premium goes into this big vat. And if you're pretty healthy by the time, let's say you're 65, when you really start to get sick, then basically you go to, Medicare. So insurance companies actually make money based on people not like using. But the problem is if you have a deductible, a lot of times people don't want to pay out of pocket because they're like, oh, but I have this insurance that's supposed to take care of it. So they don't seek help. And then they also believe that the insurance company has these regulations, and somehow they've handed over their authority of like how many times you should see the doctor, right? How you have to get permission. Let's say if breast cancer runs in your family, then, it's like, well, when do you get a mammogram? At 40 or 50? Or when should you get a colonoscopy? Like all of those things. And then the numbers are always kind of like changing, right? When it should be. Well, if you have a history of cancer in your family, why would you wait until you're 40? Like like that's kind of like much later when there are all of these other things that are impacting, right? It doesn't mean, oh, now I'm 40, I have to worry about it. Actually, if that runs in your family, of course, environmental factors, then start changing your diet, right?
Yeah.
All of those you have control over that. You don't have to wait to get some, to have be screening to tell you, oh, I better be careful, because that's already the problem now is there. You can't fix that problem other than surgery or taking medications, right? And so this is the issue with insurance. If you think like with your car, the time you use your car insurance is when you have an accident, right? But if you have to change your tires and change your oil and clean you take care of it. That's part of maintenance. And that is the big difference is that people are not even, paying out of their, paying to take care of themselves, right? With things.
Yeah.
And what I do and what you do is at the point of prevention. This is the time to use it, right? But if you wait until you get to a state where you're really, really ill, then you really don't have a choice but to be in, using things that are life-saving. And then, of course, you'll run out of your deductible, and then you're going to, tap into insurance, which will then start to say, well, only so many treatments of chemo, only so many, right? Because there's always this thing in the background of making money. And so that standard, getting back to originally that standard of health, before is like, okay, if you're not sick, so if your numbers look good, that's good enough, right? Just keep taking those drugs. That's good enough. And so we really need to be, conscious of our health. And we're in charge of our body. Someone else, like we can't hand that authority over to someone else. They don't know better. They have an agenda. They're making money, right? They're gonna, and then in the end, when you're retiring, you're gonna have to like put your house up and your life savings to pay for treatments and stuff like that, and a quality
I know people
of life.
that have done that had to expedite their whole. I know a lady who had to expend her whole 401k because her husband got so sick and they had to put him he's in a nursing home now, and they had to get. So yeah, it's I say
you see the cost. So the cost involved is that you front load your health.
Yeah.
Right? Because once you get to a certain point, like I don't want to say the point of no return, but we are racing against the fact that we are, we do age. And it's up to us to make those choices now. We don't have to live in the way we do. That's a choice. I don't care if, a label is telling you that it's, oh, it's okay or whatever. You're like, come on, look at that. Just because it's low fat and low calorie, it's loaded with sugar.
Yeah, absolutely.
So figure that out. Like, I mean, I don't say figure it out, but you understand what I mean. You can't be like, oh, like there's so many things at play, and it's really the onus of the individual to decide to take charge of their health destiny. That's what like to really like how are chemicals that are engineered in a lab to make genetic genetically modified food or something.
Right. And part of that comes down to we're just in a reactionary state when it comes to our health instead of in a preventative state, or just a healthy choice in general. And a lot of that comes down to awareness and education, like the idea of Roundup being in. There was a study that they found in kids cereal. There's Roundup because we use genetically modified crops that are resistant to Roundup, so you can spray the whole field, kill everything but the crop. But then where's the Roundup go? Into the corn, into the wheat. And so but if you're not aware of these things, then you can't make a response and choice, and then you wait until you're sick, and then now you're reactionary. So that's like a big component to that. And one comment too on the idea that something runs in the family. In access consciousness, we have this idea that because you align and agree with, hey, grandma had this, hey, your aunt had this, that you can then, from your own point of view, create these things. And there's the Bruce Lipton, who wrote The Biology of Belief, that shows that you can take genetic predisposition tests and change them through doing different types of belief system work and that type of thing. So we're not necessarily a slave to our genetic code.
Absolutely. And it doesn't, just because I hear this so much. Well, my father had high cholesterol. My father had diabetes. That doesn't mean that you are going to genetically express those conditions. If you clean up your body, you may never express those conditions. So what was your dad doing? What was your mom doing? Right. You know, it's not a death sentence. It's
also habituated in your family, right? You have those mirror neurons, so you end up doing the same things, including the emotional component. Right. Yeah, there is. I don't know if I didn't read that. I can't remember if I did read The Biology of Belief. That there's also an aspect in theta healing where they talk about the morphogenetic field, which is that kind of misty thing that turns, because there's a lot of talking epigenetics,
right?
There's more. So when you look at that, what's happening. And then again, like you said, do the calling in to those spirits of the baby that comes into that being. I believe that that is also like part of that, creating that misty field that has more positive, so that it comes right in. The thing with Roundup. There's this woman, it's just fantastic. Her name is Monica Gagliano, and she wrote this book, And Thus Spoke the Plant. And she answered a question about genetically modified foods and stuff. And what she said is that is like creating a standard that everything is going to be the same, right? So when you genetically modify plants, you want them all to be the same. Just like the dairy cows in the U.S., they can trace back to, let's say, two bulls that sired them all, right? Because, and so most of the cows that are the dairy cows, the black and white ones, are genetically the same, like very close. You can build the lineage. And when you have genetically modified crops, is basically they're all the same. And that goes against nature of variety, right? Because the more variety that we have, and that is what makes something strong, right? So when you have this one thing where everything is the same, that is not really a good health model, right? So it was very interesting, the things that what she had talked about, and also, the spirit of plants, which I'm sure you're.
Because in shamanism, we believe everything is conscious. Everything is part of the same animated essence in the Kausai-Pacha, which is the field of living energy. And therefore, on some level, you can communicate with everything. So what if you were in such communion with your food that you could have a dialogue and know what will be a contribution to my body and what won't be? And that's another thing we talk about in Access, is that the body and the being are two separate things. And you need to really bring it together and have them work together in order to achieve the best health and well-being, because otherwise it could be like two things fighting against each other. Like your body doesn't like wheat, but yet I force myself to eat pasta every day because it's cheap. Things like that, where
it's genetically modified pasta.
Right.
That's the panpsychism, right? Panpsychism is that consciousness. So she talks about like that the plant gave her messages. And that is, so also in Chinese medicine, with the herbs, that the intelligence of these formulas are still beyond the understanding of science. Like, how did they, combining these things, that there's so much detail and knowledge into what the plant medicines can do, singularly and then in combination, which they call the dui yao. It's like the two, how they work together. You have and then you work in tandem. They do something else, and this also speaks to what we call the biounity that we have with plants and foods, because we're in the same environment. We share immunity, right? So we can get the immunity from the plants that we eat, because we have the synergy. We're not really separate. We need those things. And so that's an aspect of Chinese medicine. They don't talk about it, but it's kind of used in a way that's what it is. So if you speak about spiritualism in your food, it seems like, that's not very medical, right? And, but of course, that goes without saying, right?
Right. And what was the name of that plant book? One more time, I'll grab a link to it on Amazon to put in the comments.
Oh, her name is Monica Gagliano, Gagliano, and she actually does, she's in the psychedelic world. She's a researcher in Australia. So
I found it. Yep, okay, I got the link, and I will post that for you.
If you listen to her speak, she was on the stage also with Michael Pollan, and they have I'll send you a link to it, and how she talks about, like those moments of realization where, like, she had to shift as a scientist to realize, to shift in order to, to be with the plant to get it. So it wasn't like, it's not a separate thing. And it's really beautiful how she explains it. I'm sure you'll love it.
Yeah, I'm going to be getting it on Audible as soon as we're wrapped up here. And I'm curious too. Like, I know you're in New York City, and I've been posting your website for people to connect with you. Do you do work with people virtually? Like, I know Dr. K, she works with people from all over the country and even internationally with her biofeedback machine. Is there things that you do remotely as well, or you mainly see people in person?
Well, I'm a mainly in person, but I do help people, with consultations and with like making recommendations. I might make some supplement or herbal recommendations, but I really need to have like a full health history and get a sense of what might be good. And so what I will do is I could do like a form of coaching for them. And then I'll also maybe look for a practitioner that's local to them, to kind of help put it together, right? Because that's important. A lot of times people just don't know where to look. So you just look at a list and you're like, okay, I don't know who's going to be good for me. I don't know what to look for. And so they may just be like, oh, maybe I'll look at it later, right? And then they miss an opportunity to do something with it. So definitely, I have a network that of people that I like to help, if they want.
Yeah, and a question coming up from Mark. He does occasionally ask a serious question, and whether or not it's regarding pregnancy or not, this is a problem that a lot of males may suffer from. But do you have any thoughts on how a male who has very low testosterone levels could bring themselves more into balance, or being more at what was considered like the appropriate level?
Well, I probably want to look at the whole health history there. I mean, one of the things that I would look at, and what we talked about before, was the sleep, because that is also going to affect the whole endocrine system. There are certain foods that and also I would look at what kind of inflammations are going on. So, and I think that would be the same in functional medicine. We want to look at like what is, the root of why those levels are low, like, and also like how low, right? How low are they? Sometimes it is, like fatty liver. But I would look at probably more like some kind of toxicity that's in the system. And this is just since I don't know what the health history is, that there's something that's interfering with the natural balance of it, right? And then and it's hard because we don't know what the baseline was before. Right. So sometimes we arrive and like, oh, it's low, but like, how long has it been going on? And that's a matter of tracing back to what is it that has been like kind of that this is the symptom of something else. And so that's usually like, oh, like just taking those steps back. What was that? Because oftentimes that one thing is continuing, and also could be something that he's eating. And environmentally is doing that.
I think you called him out without knowing you were calling him out, baby.
Yeah.
And then, Dr. K, how about you? Any thoughts specifically with testosterone levels?
Yeah, it's the same thing. You got to look at the liver. To me, that's the liver conjugates and does a lot of hormonal type things. So it's very involved in hormones and hormone production, and so. That's a place that I would look, and cleaning out the system, because I think we have an idea. I know I have an idea what's going on there.
And the gut, and also the gut.
Yeah,
Okay, so one of the things that I kind of would like across the board make a recommendation is, and that is they got to go onto a probiotic. Like that is.
I start everybody on a probiotic.
Everybody. You just have to, and there's no, and I'll tell you, I used to, kind of be like, oh, people taking, supplements and, but you know what? Our environment is so toxic in a way that we leach out, minerals all the time and all kinds of compounds that we actually need to function, because we're always detoxing, right? And in order to get rid of toxicity, it has to chemically bind with something. So we lose like bone mass, we lose all kinds of things that we actually really need to maintain body function. And so very often people have different low levels of nutrients that they need, or the big thing is that they're not as clean as they're eating. They're still unable to absorb, like there's a problem in their digestive tract. And that happens really early on. There's a fellow who, in Chinese medicine, there's something called Gu syndrome. And those are, it's also called possession, right? So people end up having yeast is like a form of possession in Chinese medicine, right?
Interesting.
Yeah.
It is. Well, because you think about leaky gut syndrome and stuff like that, and candida buildup.
Yeah, candida, funguses, and because what it is, it's considered a form of possession, because all of a sudden you have these cravings, like the sugar, the pasta, and really, if you look at what's going on in the brain chemistry, also the levels are kind of being, all over, that they're different, and something is driving. So the relationship, that people have, let's say with alcohol, or with sugar, with fatty foods and stuff, is to feed the imbalances that are in their system. So the first thing that they'll go to is the closest thing. They'll go to like chips or something because there are fats in it. But that's like a very poor substitute for what they really need nutrition-wise. But it's that desire, that kind of needing it and obsessing about it, even with like cookies and caffeine, and even I consider, like this new biohacking thing is really just pushing your body in a way that's unnatural. Even if you're using, like natural ingredients, that it's really like, forcing the body to do something when it's not in balance. Right? We always want to go to the natural state of balance. So getting back to the, having a balanced system and digestive system, that if you ever took an antibiotic, even as a child, over time, years and years and years, more than likely, there's the imbalance that starts to happen, right? And then before you know it, you hit a certain age, stress levels, and then you see people suddenly gaining lots of weight, and then they can't get rid of it. They start to have also emotional problems, like people who have a gluten intolerance, they tend to have more anxiety. Certain kinds of foods can push people more towards paranoia and feelings. Excuse me. So this is considered, when it affects your psyche, that's considered kind of like a spiritual or a kind of possession situation. So also like parasites do that, right? Parasites would be considered a kind of possession because they stimulate you to do certain things.
And from a shamanic perspective, it could be an ancestral entity, or even and all kinds of different things. Like they oftentimes nest in organs, and you'll find like an entity in a liver and things like that. So I wonder if that is like the energetic component that then is manifesting physically, because that's very much in my world that I deal with people that have issues like that. But I never connected those entities specifically to something going on in the physical body, like a condition like hormones or leaky gut syndrome or anything like that. But I bet there is a correlation between that.
Sure. Well, I mean, during a woman's cycle, she's gonna, when they, like a lot of women have cravings, like premenstrually, they may have cravings, and the hormones are also changing, and there's also an increase in inflammation in the body, which makes that like the swelling and the irritability, and then the wanting to kind of self-medicate, let's say with like chocolate or with something fatty. And so those are a way that, we're always looking to go to balance ourselves. It's just that we make certain choices which are not great. But the end result is what is driving us to do that is to go back into a state of balance, right?
Yeah. When you mentioned cravings when people are in their cycle, how many beings without bodies would love a body and they're egging the woman on to get pregnant, maybe? I don't know. That just making things up. But that could be, bodies are... But we say that in Access, like sometimes a being that you're clearing, they're not ready to move on. And it's like, well, go find two people and bring them together so you can get a new body then, but you can't stay here. And so that is like a thing that you could be egged on. And even one of my teachers, she realized that she was kind of led to a one-night stand just so she could be able to have this child that really wanted to come into the world. And she was, things like that happen. And Mark was asking, and this is final call for questions. If anybody has a question or a comment, we always like to wrap up before the end of the hour. So if you have a question you haven't been asking yet, now is the time. But Mark was just asking, are there any foods in particular that you would never eat from a health standpoint, or from a just knowing anything about foods?
I will not eat brain. Like cow brain. I would not eat that.
Oh.
So like any grain, not just like wheat?
Bet you weren't expecting that one.
No. Well, I was curious. So, is that any grain, or is that more like wheat, or would that include like quinoa and things that are more like the seeds and things?
No, it's a brain.
Oh, brain.
Like cow brain or
brain, calf brain. There's certain I eat grain. I eat grain. There. Although a lot of what I will say is. And also like really organ meat. I want to steer,
Curious, is that a preference thing or an energetic thing? Or both?
It's a little bit of both. It's just, once upon a time it was probably okay. It's just now there's so much toxicity and there's so many other things to eat. But in the Asian culture, we eat we'll eat everything. I mean, we'll eat the stomach. You eat like the chicken's feet. Like all different parts. Nothing is really wasted. I just it's not for me a thing that I would want to. Barbecue. Only with fava meat.
And Dr. K, how about you? Anything on your no-go list?
Yeah, things that I don't care for, and I don't care how you make it. I won't eat liver. People are like, oh, I'll make you liver and onions. It's really, I won't eat it. That's the one thing. Of course, there's a lot of things that very occasionally I have, but I've cut way back on that are just not healthy for you. So it's kind of an ambiguous question, but in way of preference, like liver, I won't eat it. I don't care how somebody makes it. I just won't eat it.
Yeah.
And where I would go with that is like, I really ask my body, like one, right now I'm plant-based. That may change if my body's requirements change. But I have a friend, just to share with you, Mark, you might know him, Ryan Dean. He used to work out of the center. He had been vegan for years and years and years. And through a process and access, like getting in tune with the body, he was walking through the grocery store and he's like, okay, body, what would you like? And he's kind of following the energy, and he's in this aisle with all the canned goods, and he's like, you want something canned, really? And he's walking by the tuna fish, and all of a sudden the stomach's like, and he's just like, really? No, it can't be, because he's vegan. He was a very opinionated vegan, and so, but he honored that and bought the tuna fish, and he's like, it was the best thing I ever had. So I would invite everybody to, even if you have things on your no-go list, like if you really get in tune with your body, and Mark, this is not an invitation to go eat cookies, but if you really get in touch with what would be a contribution to your body, it might surprise you. Like I never thought I would be plant-based yet when I got really centered, but I think I was just so unhealthy that I needed a multi-year detox. So maybe that will change for me. But really, what does your body require, and what would be a contribution would be a huge thing to be in tune with.
Yeah. I'd also like to, one other thing, artificial sweeteners. I do not, that is like all of those like fake sugars and stuff like that. Yeah. I'd rather, and I'll tell my patients, I'd rather you just have a little, like your body can process real sugar. So if you're going to have some, then just have some. But these like Coke Zeros or whatever other drinks that are, like no sugar, they have so many other chemicals and it's
yeah, I did a whole video on that, and it's just
There's ones in some of the diet products, it's actually in bold. It contains this big long word that I forget what it is, but it's a neurotoxin, especially at high temperatures. And it's like they justify it because of kind of whatever, I won't say the brand name, it will never get that high where it'd be a problem. But I believe they even use that chemical in war times as a biological weapon. But it's in your diet pop sometimes. I'm not saying which one it is. And now that you bring that up, and I avoid artificial colors as well, like red 40, yellow 5. They're no carcinogens. And in Germany, like if you have a product with red 40 in it, just for one example, by law they have to put on there that it is a known agent that causes behavioral issues in children. And here, not a peep about that. So that's another one on my personal list where I avoid. Like if there's a cherry pie that really looks really good and there happens to be red 40, maybe occasionally I'll do it, but in general, that's one of the big things that I look to avoid.
Yeah. One other thing that I just wanted to point out, because we talked about Roundup, and that's an endocrine disruptor. And this is another for birth control, hormonal birth control is listed as an endocrine disruptor. So as much as it prevents women from getting pregnant, what it is it bathes your entire body with these hormones. And so your whole body is being disrupted, and many women are on it for up to like 20 years. And that's, that's one of the things, looking at, they might've been 15 and they had, painful periods, and then they just got put on birth control, and those painful periods were never addressed. And then when they get off, they want to get pregnant. But the bigger issue I look at is for 20 years, they've been on some kind of hormone replacement, but the hormones are meant to disrupt their entire system so that they're unable to get pregnant, right? And so when you kind of look at like the medicine, like the way that we use, let's say the Western model is really like a disruption to the natural cycle of our bodies. The natural state is really about disrupting it. Right? And so this is, I want to just kind of like draw the idea of harmonizing and balancing is really more that coming from that Eastern perspective versus let's like shake this person up so that it does what we want it to do, but it's not a healthy model.
Yeah, and we had Greg contributing that lately he's been on a thing with Brussels sprouts, sauerkraut, and broccoli and banana lately, and that's the exact kind of craving I'm talking about. Like when sometimes I just want pineapple pistachios. He's an example all the time, and that's just what my body requires. And then Mark jokingly asking, I'm sure, are cookies healthier if the Girl Scouts bake them? No, Mark, they're still well, maybe they are. It might be wholesome ingredients. As a reminder,
I actually know somebody who. She said that she does like there's so many ingredients and aside from the gluten. And so I said to her, why don't you create a recipes for people to do that are gluten free, that the Girl Scout cookie alternative, because there are a lot of people that now have so many food allergies that they're going to miss out on the Girl Scout cookie aspect, but to create something else. Yeah. So no, they're not, because Girl Scouts actually don't bake them; they sell them. And I believe in female entrepreneurship, so I give a shout out to Girl Scouts for that.
Yeah. And for everybody, again, also who are listening, you can find out more about our guest on our website. It's integrativehealingarts.com. And also a reminder, this next healing clinic, Dr. K and I are not doing the healing clinic. We normally do it on the first and third Mondays. Dr. K is abandoning me for her bodybuilding show. So there'll be no healing clinic. And we also will not have a stream next Friday because Dr. K will be all buffed out, strutting her stuff down the right way.
Friday. Next Friday is good. That's the 29th.
Oh, I'm a week ahead. Okay,
yes,
yeah. So
the 7th, I will.
I take it back. So there is a show next week, but still no to the healing clinic. Boy, my whole world just got rocked right there with what reality
straightened it out.
Do you have any virtual events or anything that people can connect with you upcoming or anything like that on your website?
I don't have any that are happening yet, but what I would say is if you follow me on Instagram and Facebook, or actually probably Instagram, it'll be faster. I will be actually doing a clubhouse on Sunday, this Sunday, at there's a 5 o'clock about acupuncture and Chinese medicine I do with a group, and then I'm going to be jumping into a room at 5:30, and that's about fertility, and that's with the PCOS cocoon, and it's so addressing fertility issues and women that have polycystic ovary syndrome.
Yep. And this covers you up a little bit, but I do have your Instagram here, which is at TsaoLin Moy. And then also your Facebook page, which is at Integrative Healing Arts NY, New York. So
yes.
You can follow you there as well.
Right.
Cool. And if you post a link, or if you send me the link to the Clubhouse thing, I can post that update the video description for your Clubhouse. I just finally got on Clubhouse. I haven't done much with it yet, but I'm very excited. Though I did find a way that on my iPad I can mirror it to the screen here and actually share the Clubhouse on a live stream for when I do have a room. So I'm planning to combine the two and reach more people that way. So maybe we can create a Clubhouse together.
It's a new platform. It's kind of exciting.
Yeah. and for those of you who don't know Clubhouse, it's on Apple products only. It is by invitation only. So you have to find somebody that is on it that haven't used up their 2 invites. So they've been growing very slow and organically, and they've really launched with a whole bunch of celebrities endorsing it. But it's all these just audio only rooms where people come together, they offer talks, and get a lot of interaction with people talking on different topics. So maybe Dr. K and I can get that if she has an Apple device.
I do, and I'm already on Clubhouse, but I haven't gotten
to do
anything yet.
Well, Dr. K, we got to create something around that. But but thank you, everyone.
Definitely.
Yeah, and any final thought as before we close out our conversation today? Any final words of inspiration?
Yes, what I would say is that it's never too late to start getting healthier and do it step by step and consciously. So it could mean that you are drinking, intention is to drink 1 more glass of water a day, or go to bed an hour earlier, and really just start and notice the positive changes that you are going to experience. And that is actually going to help you to move further along into like doing more things that are healthier. And it's about like being more conscious about your health. And really when you go to eat something, think about like what it is that you're eating and like, is this really going to benefit me, or is this kind of, going to create inflammation? And I think just consciously thinking about it, that it's going to help and trigger to make better choices. And that is, more of a holistic perspective, and seek out somebody to help you. Like, you don't have to do it on your own.
Yep, Dr. K sees people all the time, and there's even on the Emergence of Being website, you can sign up just for like an initial evaluation and get hooked up to the quantum biofeedback thing. So there's like a ton of things, and now we have someone to refer people to if they're looking to get pregnant and they can't. So I'm so happy to have you in my repertoire of referrals as well.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, but thank you, everyone, and we will catch you next Friday. And if you're listening on the replay, if you want to catch the show live, it airs every Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you're watching this on the video and you want to binge watch all the audio archive, it's on iHeartRadio, iTunes, all of that. And all those links are in the video description. And we'll catch you next time. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us today for the show. Holistic Health and Healing is part of the Emergence of Being Contributor Network. Visit us at emergenceofbeing.com for all of our contributors' content and to learn about our services and upcoming events. Please take a moment to subscribe to the channel. You can contribute to the show by supporting our efforts and sharing our content with those you care about and those who need it most.